Yo guys, what is up? Max and our first Descendant video, and today we are recapping the first Descendants first anniversary stream. Now, this was a massive stream. The runtime was over 4.5 hours long, and they talked about a ton of stuff. This is like the previous stream that they did. This was kind of everything that I was hoping that stream was going to be. They covered and showed gameplay of just about every single aspect that is being added to Season 3 and more. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So one of the first things that they showed off was the Axion Plains gameplay, where they were showing off not only the variety of enemies, but also the variety of different activities to be doing in these plains. One of the biggest things to highlight, at least in my opinion, about this new area and the content that is being made for it, is this content is scaled for what they are considering having a fully built build. So that means every slot on your Descendant is catalyzed and filled with a mod. You have RK tuning 40, and your weapon is fully cored. They want this content to be challenging, and they're reworking the enemy types and the enemies that you're going to be fighting in this to be drastically different than how it exists in our current base game. For example, they said that they want all of the ads and trash mobs to not just disintegrate immediately to Descendant abilities, so that you're only fighting the actual elites that stay alive for a second. They want this to feel like you're fighting a horde, where you're being surrounded by enemies. They want it to be challenging. They want it to be engaging. And so that sounds really great. Now, in terms of these enemies, one of these enemy types, they said adjust to your damage that you're doing. So, for example, in this clip, this Freyna is killing these enemies, and she's killing them with her abilities, meaning that these enemies, when a new wave spawns, they adapt to her damage type and then become very resistant to toxic damage. So they kind of mentioned that when you're playing a Descendant, you're going to want to bring, for example, if you're using a skill Descendant, you might want to bring a weapon that is doing a different elemental type of damage and kind of rotating between killing enemies with your guns and your abilities, because enemies will adapt to your abilities. They also said that it's really beneficial to bring in different Descendants if you're playing in a group with different ability types, like bringing in Inez and a Freyna, or a Freyna and a Bunny, so that the enemies have a harder time adapting. You're going to want to be swapping up your elements for this specific enemy faction, so that you can deal with them more easily. Now, there isn't no counterplay to this. There are different spawners and these eye beams that they showed off. So these kind of dens that spawn enemies, if you blow them up, you can prevent the enemies that are going to be coming from that to adapt to the damage that you're doing. And then they showed off, if I'm not mistaken, these larger eyes. Let's see if I can pull a clip up of it in the background there. But these larger eyes, that if you destroy these, which are going to be much harder, you can prevent them to adapting for a while. So it's still going to be possible to play only using your abilities, for example, but you're going to need to have some counterplay and really focus on different objectives in order to achieve that goal. The next thing they showed off were the ships. Now, we had seen these before, but there was one key detail that was kind of nuts, and that is we know that they are buffing Haley. Haley, by the time that this video is releasing, is getting buffed tomorrow, and we saw Haley shoot this ship for 125 million damage. We know that Haley is getting buffs, and a lot of other Descendants are getting buffed to be up to the same tier as Inez and Serena. So I don't know what they're doing with Haley, but she's looking like she might become even crazier than she already is, which is awesome. But these ships are going to bring in enemy factions, and if you don't destroy the ships, they'll deploy all of the troops that you'll then need to fight. But if you blow the ship out of the air, it'll drop all of the loot as if you had killed all the enemies, because you're killing all of the enemies. So they're basically flying loot pinatas. The next thing they showed off is some of the elites that they're adding. Now, we saw a hint of those before, but we actually got to see more gameplay of them now. Now, these are enemies that are supposed to be very challenging. You don't technically need to kill them for mission completion, but they said that they're going to do everything in their power to annoy you and attack you while you're trying to do your mission. So they are going to be something that you're going to want to deal with. Now, from the gameplay, it looked like there's multiple varieties of these elites. For example, the enemy on the right we saw with these like big crab-like claws, but we also saw variants of where it was like holding shields, and another variant where it looked like it was holding sickles. So it looks like these enemies are going to have a multitude of varieties. And with that, it also looks like they have a ton of different attacks and attack patterns. This is the clip of Freyna kind of fighting one, and you can see just the amount of attacks that this thing throws out. This is the one that had like the sickle variant. It's got the like teleport dodge. It's got a leap slash. It chased her down for a little bit. It was doing these like ring attacks that you needed to jump over and get around, as well as this like Sonic the Hedgehog roll. And then it did a like a fissure slam after doing that. It just looks pretty cool. It sounds like they're going to have a lot of different attacks and actually, pose a challenge, which looks awesome. There's also going to be these like Gundam-esque bosses that have jetpacks and launch missiles at you. I do apologize. A lot of the gameplay that they were showing and a lot of the clips are videos of a video, so they're not very clear. I don't know why they didn't just show like play the screen or play a video rather than filming the screen itself. But it is what we've got for a lot of the gameplay for this video. They also talked about what we're going to be farming in the Axion Plains, which is once again the like new open world where you're going to be getting XP, arcade tuning, augmentation cores, mutant cells, the new trigger modules, which we'll talk about in a second, and blueprints. Now, the blueprint part is crazy. They basically said that you can farm every single blueprint for like everything in Axion Plains. So if there's a Descendant piece that you need or a weapon, it sounds like you're going to be able to get basically all of the blueprints in this area as well. Now, they did kind of mention that if you want to farm something specific, the actual specific farms for arcade tuning and like mutant cells and stuff like that sound like they're still going to be more efficient. But if you're doing content in this, you are just going to be making progress in basically all of the avenues of the game. I did raise that as a concern in one of my previous videos. Hopefully, it does feel rewarding to farm this area, but not too rewarding so that it invalidates other content. So speaking of trigger modules, they are going to be this like new slot, as you can see, this like orange slot here that is next to your Transcendent modules. That is where your trigger module is going to go. Now, trigger modules apply off of different skills and different actions. So every skill in the game is getting additional labeling and categorizing so that trigger modules can work with different skills. So, for example, if we take a look at like Valby's water play, her 1 is a ground dot and a weaken. Her 2 is a clash, normal AoE, acceleration enhancement, weaken, and stack. So, for example, if you had a trigger module equipped that triggered off of casting a normal AoE, that would proc off of her 2, but it would not proc off of her 1. Now, this is just a simple way to like add a bunch of variety to builds and new actions, but in order to trigger off of things and not have like crazy amounts of things triggering off of everything, they did have to categorize all this stuff. I think it's going to be a little bit confusing at first, but these trigger modules sound really cool. They did say that they're going to be adding 9 trigger modules, of which they're going to be kind of like adding more. I don't know if that's 9 on August 7th or if it's going to be like 3 and then 3 and then 3. But we did get a look at some of these. We've got MP Bullet, Next Chance, Arc A Circulation, MP Leech, Curse Trap, Double Strike, Meteor, Battering Ram, and more. Looks like we've got Particle, Conversion Emitter, MP Bullet, and Next Chance. Okay, so it's just kind of repeating. But these will trigger off of different actions. So, for example, this Battering Ram will only trigger off of clash actions. So if you're using a skill that is a clash, it'll trigger this. And then, for example, this Particle Conversion Emitter's got Ally Enhancement, Healing Charge Supply. So, for example, just a guess, if you're using Eugen, you'd have a healing skill, so it'd trigger this particle emission. If you've ever played like Path of Exile, I think these are going to work a bit like Cast on Crit, where you've got additional actions happening off of skills. The real interesting aspect of these is these could be really powerful on different Descendants that maybe we wouldn't expect them to be. For example, like maybe Blair is the best Descendant at triggering meteors, and meteors are really strong, and then all of a sudden Blair gets a massive buff up in his ranks and like his playtime because he's really good at these trigger modules. Now, the next interesting thing about these modules is they're going to be random rolled. So, for example, I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but let's say I get a meteor to drop. That meteor could roll with, on projectile skill, I get 3 meteors. And 3 meteors could be the min roll, and it goes all the way up to like 10 meteors. It's going to be a random drop on how you get these, and these will be tradable. They're adding a trading system that you're going to be able to trade for modules, and these are going to be included in it. So if you get like a max roll meteor, you might be able to sell it for some currency to another player if you don't plan on using it yourself. They talked briefly about Daya, who they did confirm will be a playable Descendant, just not in this upcoming season. She will be playable later. They also talked about Nell and gave us a little bit of a preview of her like Arche Awakening story that's going to be going on in Season 3. This looks pretty crazy. She was giving me like vampire vibes. We did get to see her like full abilities and passives and everything later. But like, for example, in some of these shots, she's like surrounded by these like ghouls. And people were speculating that she might be somewhat of a necromancer. That is not the case. We'll go over that when we get to her abilities. So I'm probably going to do a separate video breaking down Nell pretty in depth because this video is already going to be long. But basically, she's got a very unique passive in that when she scans enemies, she's going to get increased range for each target that she scans, as well as increased damage. And a lot of her like damage abilities are based off of if she scans enemies or not. So you can like see these purple triangles on enemies are an indicator that they've been scanned, which buff up the like her other abilities. Her one is like a forward projectile. They like didn't show much gameplay of it, but there you can see it passing through enemies and hitting them. Her two seemed to be a big focus that they were talking about. This is an ability with multi-functions. Basically, you can cast it and it creates this massive debuff area. The range on this looked wild, and while the debuff is up, you're going to increase your, for example, your weak point damage on these enemies, but you can actually detonate it with her third ability and instead turn it into a like black hole that sucks up enemies. So there's multiple interactions with this thing. So the Ring of Breach you put down, and it'll dot enemies, debuff them. But with her 3, this gravitic reversal, all of a sudden you can turn the 2 into a massive grouping skill that causes an explosion, a little bit like Lepic. And the grouping on this looked really, really cool. Grouped up a ton of enemies. Here's some gameplay of it. Into a tight ball and then caused an explosion. Definitely looked awesome for like big crowd control. And her fourth ability is Gaze of the Abyss. This is the one that is a buff to her weapons where it makes all of your weapon shots weak point damage, and it lasts for like a certain duration. But if you hit enemies with your 1, you can make it last longer. So she's got interactions going on with her 1 and her 4 and her 2 and her 3. She seems to be, you know, like a bit of a higher skill ceiling Descendant where you're using a lot of combos. You're going to be scanning. I think you're going to be using a lot of actions on her, even on gun builds where you're going to be grouping enemies, debuffing them, making all of your weak point things, or your guns do more weak point damage. She seems really cool, and she seems to have both like viable gun and ability builds, which I'm really excited for. Now, they also showed off her Transcendent modules. Her Transcendent module, her first one, is called Restored Heart. This is a bit of a like team synergy one. So by default, her 2 becomes a debuff on enemies, which increases your damage. With this Transcendent module, it actually becomes a buff. Instead of debuffing enemies, it becomes a buff to your allies. So you're going to make your allies deal more damage to the enemies in your like 2. And then her other Transcendent module is multi-explosive projectile. Obviously, if you're going a full ability-based build, her fourth ability that gives you weak point damage for your guns wouldn't really do much. You probably wouldn't click it. So her other Transcendent module turns her fourth, instead of being a weak point buff, into this like almost Sharon-like ability where you summon all of these telekinetic shards and then send them out and do a big blast of damage on enemies. Also looked really cool. I know that was pretty rough, but just wanted to give you guys a brief overview. We'll get into like the actual specific stats, her reactors and all that in a separate video. We also got shown 2 new ultimate weapons. The first one is the Eraser. Now, the enemies that I basically talked about in the start of stream that adapt to your like elemental types, this erases that adaptation. So if you're using this thing and you're shooting it at enemies, you can remove their eradication and removal automated system by enzymatic reactions. This thing will basically strip enemies' resistances that they've built up to you so that you can continue to damage them with your skills or whatever element you were using prior. So it's just another way to kind of combat some of these new mechanics that you can use. And the actual like gunplay of this thing looked pretty sick. Looks to be firing quite quickly. The other weapon is the Exterminator. This is a new lock-on rocket launcher. You can see some gameplay here where basically while you're aimed down sights, it's going to take a second to lock onto targets. And then when you hit the fire button, it will fire and destroy all of them. Now, one of the interesting things about this gun that they said is the new elites are going to have these armor plates on them. And one of the ways to destroy the elites are to break their armor plates so that they start taking more damage. And they said that this weapon will lock on to the new elites' armor plates. So I could see this weapon being used to deal with some of the new elites and the Eraser weapon being used to deal with some of the like enemies' adaptive resistances. Next, they talked about the Battle Pass, which they're bringing a bunch of improvements to. The first is that the Battle Pass will now feature brand new skins now and going forward. Previously, a lot of the things in the Battle Pass were basically reskins or recolorizations of existing skins. Now they're going to be featuring brand new skins, so you can get this new like mechanic from the Battle Pass. They also mentioned that they're going to be doing a lot of improvements to the Battle Pass in terms of being able to choose more of your like missions that you want to do, seasonal challenge progression improvements, and Battle Pass XP allocation adjustment. They're looking at just making the whole Battle Pass leveling experience better. Next, we got some Hoverbike gameplay, which is looking awesome. And they revealed some crazy details about these Hoverbikes. So you're going to be able to jump on these Hoverbikes. Like, one of the biggest things that they wanted to emphasize is how fluid you can jump on and off of them. So you can jump on them from wherever. You're able to grapple while you're on them. They're going to be very speedy. And the craziest thing is you can activate an ability before jumping on them. So for example, if you're playing a high voltage bunny, you could activate your 3 and then run around on your bike with high voltage hitting things. Or if you're using like Blair and using his fire ground that puts fire at your feet as you're moving, you could use Blair and activate that. So I think we could see some pretty ridiculous farming builds based off of like, you know, getting as high duration as possible, activating your bunny 3, and then just like driving around and farming the open world on that. These are going to be things that you farm in Axion, and they're going to have different kind of tiers. So there's different bikes, some that are going to be more focused on speed, some that are going to be more balanced. And when you're on them, at first, they're not going to be like super powerful, not super fast, but you're going to upgrade them kind of how you can like upgrade the dogs in this game or the fellows so that at their max tier, they're going to be super fast and super efficient. This is the new updated home screen, by the way, or the login screen. It's now going to feature your Descendant, your Fellow, and your Hoverbike. They gave a quick preview of Inversion Reinforcement, which for the most part is staying largely the same. However, there are going to be new ones in the survival section and the season section. They're upping the survival to be basically more powerful, to give you more ways to heal, get more defense, get more shield, to deal with some of the harder content that's coming up. And then the season ones are going to have buffs for like Nell, the Exterminator, the Eraser, and more. We also finally got some Wallcrasher gameplay. Now, this is a true 8-player boss in that if you show up and you're all alone, this boss does not scale to you. There's not going to be fighting this boss solo or an option to do it solo. I mean, technically you could, but it's not going to scale down to you. It will always, regardless of the player count, always be scaled for 8 players, meaning it'll have like 8-player health. They said that this boss fight isn't going to be like super mechanic focused and require coordination because, you know, you're going to be being match made with randoms and there's going to be a lot of you. But they did say that they wanted to be like super epic with the boss doing massive lasers and crazy attacks so that the fight is a huge spectacle. They did emphasize that they hope people use support Descendants like Ajax, because Ajax is going to be able to shield people from his attacks. And in terms of using like 8 Serenas for this fight, the devs basically said, please don't. So it doesn't sound like there's really much countermeasures yet for bringing in like 8 Serenas to a fight like this. It did sound like they have a plan for something in the future for like rotating surges, which I'd imagine are going to strengthen certain characters and make other characters weaker for certain activities that will like rotate. But that's not going to be coming for a while. But this fight does look pretty cool. I will say I'm a little confused on. It seems like there's going to be open world Colossus fights happening prior to this. I think it'd be cooler if this was in an open world scenario where you saw this Colossus like walking through and destroying walls, and like maybe part of the fight was you had to stop it before it reached like Axion's like town or hub or something like that. Because currently right now you're just fighting in an arena. So, you know, I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more open world feeling. Next, they showed off the Storm Hanger. This is going to be the Void Abyss Intercept boss battle version, or the harder version of Hanged Man. They did say that they removed the cube mechanic for this, which I personally kind of like the cube mechanic, but I guess that it was like something that you kind of had to do with multiple players a bit. But instead of the cube mechanic, there's going to be more of like a timed destruction event where you're going to need to break certain parts in order to, you know, use certain mechanics or not die. Obviously, they didn't like spoil the whole fight, but they said that it's going to be hard and that they want this to be like a very challenging and engaging fight. And it's also going to be launching with the challenge mode, which is going to be even harder. They also showed off the skins for killing this new like Abyss Hangman, which are probably, in my opinion, the best skins that they've done for free for like killing one of these Abyss bosses. Both the female and the male version look awesome. They also are making some improvements to socket type adjustments. Basically, what this means is currently, if you are to reset a Descendant to level 1, when you catalyze them, all of a sudden, your stats become that of a level 1 character. So you lose health, you lose defenses, you lose max MP, and a lot of times that would hurt you. For example, if you had just catalyzed a character and then you wanted to go do a boss fight, for example, we have the example of like level 1 bunnies joining for gluttony and dying. And so now when you catalyze any character, regardless of your mastery rank, you will not lose any stats. So that level 1 character will still keep the HP and MP and defenses and everything as if they were level 40. Which is just a nice little quality of life improvement. The next thing that they're adding is basically a massive catch-up mechanic for brand new players. This is like a 2-part catch-up system. So the first is going to be this, which auto-completes all of your normal difficulty quests. You get a level 40 Descendant, you receive boost-up gear and auto-equip settings, and it begins your Sigma Sector quests. So basically, it skips all of the normal campaign. You're just like, click a button, you're done, you get a level 40 Descendant, and it sets you off on Sigma Sector. And obviously, if you just put someone immediately into endgame, they are not going to know what they're doing or what to be farming or anything like that. So the next part of that is after you do that and get set up, there's the Descendant Boost Path, which gives you new Boost Pass exclusive quests. So it's going to give you an objective and direction to go do with a bunch of gameplay information about how the game works. And it'll help you level up your Descendants and your weapons, and it'll also give you Ultimate Bunny for free. This is not a paid thing. It's not a as far as we're aware. They didn't say it was paid, and it sounded like it's just a free event. But this is an event that they're going to be running. They don't know if they're going to get rid of this or not. They basically are doing this as a trial. The first Descent has a massive issue with like new player initiation, with the slog that the campaign is, plus the amount of crafting hours and time that you need to wait before you can even have a fully built Descendant or weapon. And they want new players that are jumping into Season 3 to be able to get to the Season 3 content without having to grind for hundreds of hours. So this is a way to catch up those new players. I think this is a great decision. However, I don't think it alleviates the larger issue that is the new player experience, and that is that, for example, this new content, they want a fully built Descendant, a fully built weapon, and such. And if you are to catalyze a full weapon, each catalyst takes like 7 to 8 hours to build, and you need 10. You need 10 on a weapon or a Descendant to have a fully built build. That is 70 to 80 hours of waiting before you can do the content unless you're swiping. And I think that's a massive mistake and a massive issue. And I think they'll continue to lose new players because of the amount of wall crafting, or like the massive wall that crafting is and Catalyst is to get to a full build. Now, it does sound like there's going to be a potential crafting boost if your server kills Wallcrasher, where they're going to like lower crafting timers. They didn't give us any more details on that. So hopefully it's substantial, because my worry is that people are going to do this boost. They're going to do the boost path. They're going to get to a character and they're going to use the things that they're given. And they're like, wow, this is cool. I want to go get a new weapon or a new Descendant and level that. And then all of a sudden they're going to be in the same line of fire that all new players are, in that they've got like hundreds of hours basically of waiting in order to use their weapon and their Descendant at full power. The next thing that they announced is monthly Descendant buffs. They're going to be picking a Descendant basically every month to adjust and fit to the meta. So, you know, obviously we're getting a bunch of buffs in a day to Valby, Viessa, Haley, Glay, Sharon, Enzo, Blair, and Lepic. And we're, you know, myself and many others was like, what about Jaber? What about Kyle? What about Eugen and all these other characters? They're going to be doing monthly balance changes to Descendants. This is, once again, buffs. They're not talking about nerfs with this. They've, once again, doubled down on their stance that they will not nerf Serena or other characters. So you don't need to worry about that. They're very well aware of Jaber's issues, and they said that this is not going to be just a numerical buff. It's going to be a fundamental change to how Jaber works. So they hear us, and they were kind of memeing about, you know, Jaber being forgotten while they were chatting about it, which was pretty funny. They also are doing even more quality of life improvements to the reward loop, optimized farming routes, additional alternative farming spots. They want to increase the variety of content that you can do to farm certain things. You're going to be able to see players' name cards in Albion, so more like name recognition. Inversion reinforcement improvements. You're going to be able to save your inversion loadout per Descendant. So like a lot of times you'd have a loadout and you'd have to change it constantly to do different activities. So now if you have like an inversion level 30 loadout, it would already have your like chill damage weapon selected. So more quality of life. And then they're also making invasion improvements. They're simplifying the invasion memory puzzle even more. Whatever. That it's already like very simple, but I guess they're making it even easier. That content is, yeah, whatever. Next, they showed off a metric ton of skins coming to the game. These were the bunny skins getting added, so you can dress up like a bunny on other characters that aren't bunny. There's also new racing skins getting added. These are, you know, racing skins because we're getting Hoverbikes, so you can wear these while you're riding the new bikes. They're also adding a new arcade emote. Enough said. They also showed off new premium skins for Enzo and Inez. Enzo is, you know, more of a cadet salute, while Inez is Inez. They're also adding a new summer look skin. This is dropping August 21st. You can get a cosmetic for your character as well as your fellow, which includes a like penguin topper, which looks awesome. Penguin having a little drink, chillaxing. Then they showed off all of these skins. We've got this is like the default skin for the Husky. They've got rider skins here. This is the lounge set. This is going to be the like alternate premium Luna skin. And then these are like 3 kind of variations of a like nurse skin. They all look pretty cool. The lounge set is basically just underwear. But yeah, cool looking skins. And then they showed off even more skins. We've kind of got like a Mercy looking skin. I'm guessing this is for like just for Serena. We had some Christmas skins, casual coffee skin. And then they showed off some football and cheerleader skins, a kind of like Raging Bull skin, and then these 2 were like a new succubus skin that they're going to be dropping. Also, all look pretty cool. Here's the skins in game, and you can see the like sword that they've got on, which is obviously really awesome, but I think it's also potentially going to be really cool because I think you could use the back attachment on any Descendant. So if like you wanted to use like a Cyber Sharon look with like a sword on her back, that is going to be a possibility. They also showed off the lounge area, which was one of the crazier moments of the stream. They talked in depth about the amount of work that they had to put in to get their toes to be realistic, because now the Descendants aren't going to be wearing shoes. And they talked about that you can like lie down the Descendants in this lounge. I don't know. It's going to be coming at a later date. There's also going to be collectibles that you can get to decorate your lounge with. And they looked like there was quite a bit of variety of things to collect. I'm not sure if these are going to be paid things or if they're going to be something that you can like farm for. But, you know, look how cool this looks with the different scenes that you're going to be able to like decorate around your lounge. They also gave us a sneak peek of the Void Vessel missions, which are going to have new bosses in them and new layouts. They also mentioned that you're going to be able to use your like hoverbikes in these new Void Vessel missions. So I think they're going to be like significantly larger. But they're adding multiple new Void Vessel missions over the coming months after Season 3 launches. So it's not just going to be one new variant. There's going to be multiple. They also gave us a sneak peek of the new Descendant Harris. If you don't know who Harris is, she's actually by the ship, by like the kind of like helicopter ship on the landing pad in Albion currently. She's got these like Doc Ock arms, and they said that this is going to be the new Descendant that's going to be coming out later this season. So we're getting Nell, and we're also getting Harris. And they said that she's going to be a skilled damage dealing Descendant. So she's going to be able to use her arms for different attacks in different ways. Next, they showed the roadmap. So when Season 3 launches, we're getting Axion Plains, Wallcrasher, Hoverbike, Trigger Modules, Nell, Near, the Legion of Breach, Stormhanger, Breakthrough Episode, as well as new Battle Pass, inversions, external components, monthly balance, and a bunch of quality and life improvements to the game. Then the month after, we're getting the Lounge, Ultimate Luna, more trigger modules, the Husky, more balance and more modules. The month after is Swords, new Void Vessel Dungeon, the Void Abyss Lava Citadel, as well as more monthly balance, components, and more trigger modules. Next, we get Ancestor modules, which they haven't actually clarified what those are yet. I'm kind of picturing them like Warframe's Prime mods. Then we're getting Trading, the Supermassive Receptor Dungeon, Harris, a new collab. That's when Episode 2 is going to launch with more trigger modules and the Hypernova Sword. And then at the very end of the year, that's when we're going to get Ultimate Eugen, the Lounge 2.0, Forbidden Sanctuary, a Grim Reaper boss fight, and more like balance and stuff. They did say that they saw the feedback on the spacing out of the content. And basically, they said that they'd love to move things up, but they really want to deliver the highest quality content that they can. And in order to do that, they just don't have the resources or time really to like move these kind of things up. So this is when they're going to be releasing. They're not going to make adjustments to this, but they hope that when the content releases, it's as quality as possible. They also did a Q&A, which was live with like, you know, a ton of different players and content creators. And I do just kind of want to apologize real quick. I was streaming at the time, so I couldn't use my actual camera for this. So I had to use a virtual camera that was a mirror of my current camera. And in doing so, it created a massive delay. So they were asking people to like raise their hands, and I had to raise my hand 30 seconds prior to them raising their hands. I was also on a massive audio delay. So like they called on me and I was still talking on something that I had said like 20 seconds later. So it was a little bit of a mess on my end. So I do just kind of want to apologize for that. That's my bad. It kind of looked like I was trolling them because I was constantly raising my hand when they weren't looking for questions. And then anytime they were looking for questions, my hand was not raised because I just wasn't ready for it. So it was a really, really fun stream. And I'm super glad that they did this, live Q&A. Definitely something super risky, but it also is just something that's really cool for a community. I'm going to be honest, I can't really imagine another game company being able to pull something off like this. Like imagine if like Marathon did a live Q&A with 100 fans. Everyone was respectful, and I think it went really well despite, some small minor technical difficulties. And I think season 3 is looking really good. Obviously, once we actually get our hands on the content, we'll be able to give some more proper feedback. And they are going to have a real demo that we're going to be able to play before the season launches. So I think that's going to operate as a little bit of a test realm where we're able to give a little bit of feedback and also, start to form some opinions on the new content. But everything is looking good on my end. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap and the breakdown. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.